So the first year is designated towards really the first two factors: creating a common agenda and shared measurement. So this means that the multi-stakeholder collective impact network is formed, and that's usually by invitation to all of the organizations in the region. So we're not going to reinvent the norm that we have and only choose the organizations that are working up in the top of the hierarchy or leadership that have always been funded, but we're going to open it up and actually recruit other smaller organizations that are effective in this work as well. So it's truly multi-stakeholder. So group meeting and facilitation services are defined, and then the data aggregation to define core problems begins, and that's really what they start on. They start bringing their data together. First they talk about their programs, what they actually measure, bring their data together and start analyzing this data in a larger aggregated pool. And conduct some formative research to determine what is needed. So what are some of these big levers of change that we can address together in our counties to affect the region? And from that, they define the common agenda. So this is a trust-building process. You're coming in, you're working with organizations and people you haven't worked with before. You're presenting data and you're presenting information about your program and your service that you haven't done so before. And conducting this formative research to come together and build trust around defining an issue. And that's an important process. And then after the common agenda is defined, organizations will define their role in addressing that common agenda. So how they are going to either morph programs or that they currently have and fit that into the common agenda model, or how they're going to add programs, or how they're going to work collectively towards the common goals. So they define their roles, really, for the next 2 years. And they sign a collective agreement. So this is kind of a constitution of the group, and this is part of the group process that I'm not going into very much in detail right now, but it's very important that a group sign a constitution or sign an agreement and celebrate the fact that they've gone through this process, they've built the trust, and they've signed on to it. It's not as strong even as an MOU, but it's part of the group process. And then the baseline data set for measurement is defined to address the common problem. So for example, the example I used for wellness policies, if that's what they chose to do, it would be number of policies changed, the type of policy and language, the effectiveness, all of that, so that and the outcome measures that they would use. So in the second year, mutually reinforcing activities are implemented and work around the common agenda is implemented. Individual organizations are trained. So there's training that occurs on how to work together and to further that trust building and those strong relationships that are developed when they address this problem. And then collective funding applications are submitted. So this means now that as a region, or maybe even selected counties within the region, can submit collective funding or cooperating funding applications around this common agenda and have the sign-on of the larger group. So they're organized in order to address the obesity epidemic around a common agenda, and they're more likely to get funding and more impactful funding, and maybe even funding that they haven't gotten before. And so this is a key part of the process in longevity as well. And then data is collected on the work that has been implemented. So we're continually collecting data towards this larger aggregated data set. And then programs and services at individual organizations are integrated towards the common agenda. And this happens in conjunction usually with funding applications, or even the development of funding applications. I've seen this process where just by organizations, cross-sector organizations coming together and designing a program that they submitted a funding application for. They didn't get funding, but parts of the program that they designed continued to be implemented, and they got funding from another source in order to support the effort. And that's what you want. You want those kind of programs to be designed. You don't want the other where they're just creating something for a grant and it goes away and it's never done. And then the third year, You create the backbone support and the long-term planning. So this continuous communication and the backbone support factor is developed during the third year after there's been proven success. And of course, the data analysis and evaluation of the collective agenda occurs. The data is shared and there's ongoing expansion of the projects related to the collective agenda. And new partners have been brought on board, so now we build trust, now we have a structure in place in order to do this work. Now we can bring in new partners that are interested in helping us achieve our common goal. And the collective funding applications are still submitted. And the collective funding application can be just to continue this work as well. That what I'm proposing today isn't a funding application to address obesity prevention per se, meaning directly, meaning that on the top it's going to say we're addressing obesity prevention. It is that we are funding a collective impact approach towards obesity prevention. And it's the collective impact process that is funded, which is what's needed. Because no one can do the work of the collective impact process without some funding and facilitation and group process and structure in place. There's no impetus for one organization, although I think cooperative extension is in the best position to do it. So these funding applications are for around the common agenda, around obesity prevention. We've now organized the organizations in the region, built trust. They know how to work together. They know how to share data. They understand the big levers of change. They've defined the problem, and they can now start to move off and apply for funding independently. And we've supported the development of this 3-year process, and that has led to, and UCC could include this in their evaluation, that has led to all of these other processes around obesity prevention. And so we would really be the backbone support organization. So how do you evaluate this kind of process? So the first evaluation factor is the establishment of the common agenda. I mean, that's a 6-8 month process, and it's data driven. So we're actually, these are numbers, these are new, you use the statistical software. That this process takes time, and it's data driven, and it's trust building. So that's one of our evaluation factors. The number and type of new cross-sector collaborations. So this leads to new collaborations among the organizations within the county or within the region. So this is one of the evaluation metrics. The creation of the backbone leadership team, the number of institutional or policy systems and environmental changes, because remember this is addressing those broader normative changes that occur, so that would be one of the evaluation metrics. And then community scale outcomes, long term. How do we move the needle on the BMI and fitness scores and dietary behaviors and things along those lines that are really the heart of the Healthy Families and Communities strategic plan, and that's really what we want to do. And the number and type of new interdisciplinary connections. So which organizations came together? What did they create as far as new collaborations? And what type of connection was made? And those are important because when you're addressing the obesity epidemic, it's important for these organizations to be able to work together in a trusting environment and really understand the issues and really work together progressively and proactively. So in summary, implementing a collective impact approach to address the obesity problem in the Central Sierra region will help UCC achieve the goals set forth in the strategic plan. And there's funding for collective impact right now. Quite a few foundations are funding this approach. The funding is generally between $100,000 and $895,000 is the highest I've heard in the rural area for a 3-year plan. And this method will help UCC better understand the region as well, because when you bring these partners together and they start to work collectively, first you understand the data. You have really the data to drive your decisions and formative research, and then understand the nuances of working with the organizations and how they can start to address some of the larger issues that we need to define in the strategic plan. Thank you.